My parents kicked me out to let my golden sister live there, even though I bought the house. But karma came faster than expected. I, 37F, have spent the last 15 years building my career as a senior manager at one of the leading investment banks on Wall Street. This is a story about my complicated relationship with my sister, Emily, 47F, my parents, both in their late 70s, and a house I recently bought for them that became the center of constant family conflict. To understand how we got here, I have to take you back to the beginning. My parents were in their late 40s when I was born, so I was an unplanned child. My mother would often tell me they already had Emily, who was 10 at the time, and that she was more than enough. She didn't say this with malice, but in a tone that somehow made it worse. She would say, "We didn't plan for you," as she was arranging Emily's extracurricular activities or putting together her college application paperwork. These seemingly harmless comments were a constant reminder that I was an afterthought in our family, and they shaped my early years. I might not even be here if it weren't for my maternal grandparents' persistence. My parents saw me as a burden they hadn't asked for, but they were thrilled about the possibility of having a second grandchild. That I was an afterthought in my parents' lives was evident right away. Every morning when they dropped me off at my grandparents' place, they had the same routine. My father would say to my grandfather, "You wanted her," as he got ready to go to work, keys jingling in his palm. "She's all yours." My grandparents' house turned into my true home, a safe place where I felt genuinely loved and wanted. They made sure I was fed and taken care of, picked me up from school, helped me with my homework, and took me to the park. I would spend hours learning about numbers and problem solving from my grandfather, a retired math professor. He'd say, "Numbers never lie." These lessons would later influence my career choices in ways I couldn't have predicted at the time, like how numbers tell stories that are more honest than people are at their kitchen table. Every afternoon, my grandma would help me with my schoolwork, making sure I fully understood each concept. Her patience seemed endless. She had taught high school before retiring. She would add, in a firm yet kind manner, "Knowledge is the one thing nobody can take away from you." She also taught me to cook, not as a chore, but as a way to express my creativity and love. These times spent in their kitchen, reviewing my school day, and learning how to measure ingredients exactly, became some of my most cherished memories. Despite attending the wedding, my grandparents didn't seem to enjoy the extravagant decor. My grandfather merely shook his head at the champagne fountain, and I saw my grandma scowl at a sculpture that most likely cost more than a semester's college tuition. However, they probably already knew what was going to happen, so they kept their opinions to themselves. On the day I received my acceptance letters, I sat at our dinner table with 3 envelopes spread out in front of me and gave my parents the wonderful news. My heart was pounding. "That's nice," my mother murmured, without raising her gaze from her meal. "But we can't pay for it. We spent all our savings on your sister's wedding, even took out a loan for it. There's nothing left for college." "But you paid for Emily's college," I stumbled and said, barely raising my voice above a whisper. "That was different," my mother said in a condescending tone. "We saw potential in her." The ensuing hush was deafening. "You should get a job, save up some money, and take out student loans," my father said. "That's what responsible adults do." I had never before dared to leave the table without being excused. Grabbing my phone with trembling hands, I dialed my grandmother. In a matter of minutes, I was crying as I entered their familiar front door. As he heard my story, my grandfather's expression hardened, but I could not quite read the sparkle in his eyes. They exchanged a knowing glance after I had told them everything. My grandfather took my hand and said, "Madison, we've been saving for your education since the day you were born, so we've been expecting something like this." He returned with a folder after walking to his study. Inside were bank statements demonstrating years of careful saving. "You can choose any of those universities. We've got you covered." I moved in with my grandparents that evening after packing my necessities. When I told my folks I was leaving, they were downstairs watching TV and hardly looked up. "Whatever you think is best," my mother said, keeping her gaze fixed on the TV. Did I hear the relief in her voice? The years that followed were life-changing. I decided to enroll in one of the best business schools to study financial analysis. Perhaps my drive to do things right was fueled by seeing my parents' poor financial management. Before long, my professors noticed my zeal and natural financial skills. I was staying after class to talk about difficult financial concepts. For the first time in my life, someone other than my grandparents saw possibility in me, real potential. During college, I got great internships at major financial institutions. Every summer presented fresh possibilities as well as challenges. Senior managers were impressed by my analytical skills and attention to detail. During my performance review at Morgan Stanley, my supervisor said, "You've got a natural instinct for this. We'd love to have you back next summer." With the exception of calls with my grandparents, I kept my head down and focused on my schoolwork, hardly thinking about my family. After I graduated, I was hired by one of the city's leading financial firms. I never would have imagined earning the starting pay I did. I found a small, clean, and secure one-bedroom apartment. Every morning, as I poured myself into every new challenge, I was thankful that I didn't have to make breakfast for anyone but myself. My career took off, and I received bonuses and promotions I could never have dreamed of when I was younger. In 5 years, I advanced to a senior role, overseeing complex portfolios and building significant client relationships within the industry. I became known for my strategic thinking and analytical accuracy. Every accomplishment felt like a quiet confirmation that my parents had misjudged my abilities. In the meantime, I learned from my occasional chats with my grandparents that Emily's marketing career wasn't working out as planned. James, Emily's husband, struggled to keep a steady job. They were constantly asking my parents for money. "Your mother emptied her retirement account last month to help them with rent," my grandma told me in one of our weekly conversations. "They just can't say no to her." After another year, things got even worse. Even with my parents' help, Emily and James couldn't pay their rent anymore. They and their 7-year-old twins moved back into my old bedroom. My parents, who had previously been so proud of Emily's abilities, suddenly had to provide for her whole family in addition to their golden child. I maintained my distance, focusing on building my own life and career. Every bonus, promotion, and successful deal felt like a quiet confirmation that I wasn't the failure my parents had expected me to be. By my mid-30s, I had built up significant savings and investments, including enough for a down payment on my own home. Then, everything changed. My grandfather died unexpectedly after suffering a severe heart attack. It was a tragic loss. He was the father figure who had supported me when no one else did, and he was more than a grandfather to me. After that, my grandma, who had spent more than 50 years with him, seemed to lose her spark. She followed him less than 2 months later. In every important way, they had been my real parents to me, and suddenly they were gone. While I was setting up my grandmother's funeral arrangements, I heard my mother's voice behind me at the funeral home. "Madison, do you want some help with the arrangements?" She was standing there when I turned around, looking older and more worn out than I had remembered. A part of me wanted to tell her to leave, but I stopped myself when I saw her face. "Sure," I told myself, "that would be nice." In the following few days, as we planned the service, my parents started to open up. They admitted they were having financial trouble. One afternoon, when we were choosing flowers, my father admitted, "We haven't been financially well off since retirement." He went on to say, "We barely make ends meet," before mentioning Emily's twins. I recognized that my sister and her family continued to live with them and rely on their diminishing income. A week after we buried my grandma, we met in a wood-paneled office for the reading of the will. I sat opposite them while Emily and James were slumped on recliners next to my parents. The room smelled of furniture polish and old papers, and the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. None of us knew it at the time, but what happened next would start a chain of events that would change our family relationships forever. After adjusting his glasses, Mr. Patterson, the notary, started reading in a monotone voice. I expected the usual legal terms, but what he read next made everyone stop and listen. "To our beloved granddaughter Madison, we leave our house at 1542 Maple Street and the sum of $150,000. The ensuing hush was deafening. My mother tightened her hold on my father's arm until her knuckles turned white, and Emily's mouth dropped wide open. Clearing his throat, Mr. Patterson continued. He glanced at my mother and said, "And a personal note from Mr. Henderson to his daughter, Margaret." The message said, "Remember, Margaret, that we provided you with $200,000 just when you needed it most. As we respected your needs back then, we expect you will respect our final decision." My parents, who were usually tired and a bit annoyed by the trip, would only arrive late at night to pick me up. "Madison," my grandmother would say as she hugged me goodbye every night, "you're the best thing that ever happened to us." While I was in her loving embrace, I could almost forget that I wasn't wanted anywhere else. They became my emotional rock, giving me the stability and affection that were clearly missing at home. My grandfather would often add, "Remember, sometimes the best things in life aren't planned." As Emily got ready for her promising future, I learned to live as an afterthought in my own home. My sister just acted like I didn't exist. She wasn't mean or harsh. She would just be lying on the couch, talking on the phone about boys and college applications, totally unaware of me while I played with my dolls in the corner of our shared living room. The difference in how my parents treated Emily and me was clear and constant. I would hear my mother's proud voice as she talked about Emily's achievements with family or friends. Emily got straight A's again, or Emily made the debate team, or Emily got accepted to her dream college. They went to all of her school functions, science fairs, and debating contests. They consistently made excuses for their glaring absence from my events, saying, "We're too tired, we have to work," or "You understand, don't you?" My grandparents took on the role of my cheerleaders, attending every school function with joy and true pride on their faces. When Emily went off to college, I hoped things at home would change. I was the daughter who stayed, and perhaps my parents would finally see me. I was completely wrong. I went from being invisible to being the housekeeper at the age of 14. My mother would call out my name, "Madison," before I could even put my backpack down after school. The house needs cleaning. Start with the bathrooms. I took over Emily's chores, plus a number of extra duties. I got to know the washing machine settings and quirks by heart. It became my daily companion. Cleaning, cooking, and keeping a home for parents who barely acknowledged my existence felt like an endless cycle of housework. If I hesitated in the least, my father would remark, "You live here. You need to contribute. Your sister always did her part." My career progressed from cleaning to cooking by the time I was 14. The shift wasn't gradual. My mother just stopped making dinner one day. One morning, she declared, "You're old enough now. We expect dinner ready when we get home from work." In spite of the taxing domestic responsibilities, I maintained excellent grades. My teachers noticed my aptitude for economics and mathematics and encouraged me to compete in academic events. To help me get ready, my grandfather dedicated extra time to teaching me complex concepts that were way above my grade level. "You have a gift with numbers," he would exclaim, pride shining in his eyes. "Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Dreaming about college was the only way I could escape. I would go to my room every night after doing the dishes and browse university websites. I imagined myself walking across different campuses, far away from the endless chores and cold silence of my home. Despite my household responsibilities, I was rewarded for my hard work in school. I maintained straight A's, and at the age of 16, I received acceptance letters from a number of prestigious colleges, including some known for their top-notch finance programs. Emily's engagement followed one Sunday afternoon. She bounded in the front door, pulling a tall, smartly dressed man along with her. "Mom, Dad, this is James. We're getting married." You would have thought someone had just won the lottery. My mother was sobbing with happiness, and my father was already taking out his phone to call family. My parents literally sprung from their seats. "We'll cover everything!" my mother exclaimed, hugging Emily. "Our first daughter's wedding has to be perfect!" For months, our home was consumed with wedding preparations. Every discussion centered on guest lists, venues, and flowers. Money seemed to flow like water, with expensive outfits, high-end vendors, and everything at the top end. My mother's cheeks turned pale after flushing red. Emily and James looked at each other nervously, while my father gazed at the floor. In the parking lot, my parents came up to me when the notary had finished and collected his paperwork. Something desperate had replaced the calm demeanor they'd shown during the funeral preparations. With a shaky voice, my mother said, "Madison, honey, you have to understand that we always assumed we'd inherit the house. We're struggling, but we were really depending on it. The mortgage, Emily's family's expenses. We could really use the house," my father continued, stroking his gray hair, talking about how her kids needed a yard to play in. Emily also joined in. However, I just got into my car and left. Over the course of the following few weeks, I kept thinking about my grandparents' parting gift. My life was well established near the city, and although the house I inherited was full of precious memories, it was too big for just me. In the meantime, I learned about my parents' growing financial difficulties from our weekly chats. Helping Emily and her family had drained their retirement funds, and they were finding it harder and harder to pay their own mortgage. I gave it a lot of thought before deciding I would purchase my parents a better house, one that was single-story, had a lovely garden, but was easier to maintain. With the money I'd get from selling my grandparents' house and my own savings, I could give them something cozy for their retirement years. I was shocked by their response when I shared my idea with them. They actually started crying with happiness. After several weeks of house hunting, we eventually found the ideal place. A stunning ranch-style house with large doorways and no stairs in a peaceful neighborhood. After the purchase was complete, my folks couldn't stop gushing about how thrilled they were. "A proper housewarming party is what we need," my dad said. "It's the least we can do. We'll make all the arrangements." "That would be beautiful," I said, intending to give them the deed at the party. "Tell me when, please." Weeks went by. Even though I had a lot of work to do, I kept expecting an invitation. "Oh," my mom would say, "we're still planning." You know, these things take time. My father would also say, "We want it to be perfect. We'll notify you shortly." Their evasive answers bothered me. One evening, following another vague phone call from my mother, I looked up Emily's name on Facebook. We weren't connected on any social media, and I hadn't looked at her page in years. But just hours ago, she'd posted something. "Can't wait for this Saturday's housewarming party for Mom and Dad. So excited to celebrate with everyone in this beautiful new home." Numerous friends and family members confirmed they were coming in dozens of comments on the page. Pictures showed caterers being hired and decorations being set up. This wasn't some last-minute get-together. They'd been planning it for weeks. With slightly trembling fingers, I called my mother. "Hello, Mom. I wanted to ask about the housewarming party. Do you have a date in mind yet?" "Oh, honey, not just yet," she said easily. "Most likely in a few weeks. The specifics are still being worked out. Everyone except me, it seemed. As that Saturday got closer, I had to make a choice. Should I confront them? Should I just let it go? How could they exclude me from the party after everything that had happened after I had bought them this house? I would eventually find out, but not in the way I expected. On Saturday, I parked a block away from the house I'd bought for my parents. Through the windows, I could see dozens of people mixing and talking, Emily's friends, family, and relatives. My father was giving tours of the house I'd bought, while my mother, wearing her best pearls, welcomed guests at the door. Twinkling lights and welcome banners decorated the house. Laughter and music spilled out onto the street. It was clear they had spent weeks organizing this housewarming party, the one I hadn't been invited to. For a while, I sat in my car and watched Emily's twins chase each other past crowds of adults who were watching them. Through the wide bay window, I could see moving boxes stacked in the corner with Emily's handwriting on them. The process of her family moving in had already begun. I inhaled deeply before sneaking in through the side door. The smell of flowers and catered food filled the house. Following his voice, I found my father speaking to a group of people in the living room. After all these years of hard work, he was saying, we finally did it. We bought our dream home. I carry their lessons with me as I start this new chapter of my life. Love should be given freely, not demanded. Family is more than just DNA. Sometimes walking away is the healthiest thing you can do. I didn't even open my mother's last email. I just deleted it. Whatever excuses or accusations it held didn't matter anymore. Finally, I had learned to value myself more than their conditional approval. Their idea of family loyalty has no place in the life I'm building now. New opportunities lie ahead, free from the weight of trying to earn love from people who can't give it freely. I learned what a real family looks like from my grandparents. Someday, I'll build that kind of family for myself. One based on mutual respect, unconditional love, and the understanding that everyone is equally important. At long last, the chapter of being the family afterthought is over. Being the author of my own life is only the beginning of my journey. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you. Don't forget about Emily, my mother added excitedly. She helped so much with the down payment. Such a wonderful daughter, always thinking about family first, unlike some people. She went on, responding to a question about me. Our younger daughter hasn't helped us at all, she said. Too busy with her career to care about family? Heat rushed to my face. I stood in the doorway and said, Actually, I think you've got that backwards. Everyone jumped. A dead silence fell over the room. My dad was the first to recover, forcing a tight grin. Madison? What a surprise. Especially since you forgot to invite me to the housewarming party for the house I bought, I said, stepping into the room. The silence stretched on. Emily's husband, James, whose shoes quickly caught my eye, looked curious, asking why everyone seemed so upset. One of the twins pulled at Emily's sleeve. You bought it? Yes, but it's ours now. You can't expect gratitude forever, my mother said with a touch of harshness. With heads nodding around him, my father added, gaining confidence. That's right. And frankly, you're not welcome here. This is a family gathering, my mom said, and Emily and her family will be living here too. They've already sold their house. It's all arranged. The twins need a stable home. I pulled a folder from my bag. You seem to be confused about something, I remarked, holding out the ownership and deed documents. This house belongs to me. I never signed it over to you. The color of my mother's face changed from pale to ashen. My father started rambling about his responsibilities to his family. Emily's confident smile disappeared as she realized her plan was falling apart. Despite my shaking hands, I kept my voice steady. I was planning to give it to you tonight. I thought this could be a fresh start for all of us. Instead, you've shown me nothing has changed. You can't do this, my mother shrieked. We're your parents. No, I said softly. You're just the people who gave birth to me. My real parents, my grandparents, taught me that family means more than blood. They also taught me about finances, which is why I own this house, and you don't. I turned to the stunned guests. I'm sorry, but this party is over. This is my house, and I'm asking everyone to leave. From the porch, I watched my parents, Emily, James, the twins, and all their guests leave. Some were crying. I watched them drive off one by one until the street was empty. In the yard, the decorative lights continued to twinkle, almost mocking me. Inside, half-empty drinks and discarded food plates were everywhere. The house, which was supposed to be my gift of reconciliation, ended up being the last straw in our relationship. A few weeks later, I found out they had used the money from selling their old home to buy an apartment. 3 generations were crowded into a 2-bedroom apartment when Emily, James, and the twins moved in with them. At first, they kept calling me all the time. Their voicemails went from angry accusations, "You've become so heartless just like your grandparents warned us you would," to guilt trips. "How could you do this to your own family?" I blocked their social media, emails, and phone numbers. It was a reminder of everything that had gone wrong in our family. The house is empty now. I have an appointment with a real estate agent tomorrow. It's not worth trying to fix everything. Like old photos in a dusty album, some relationships are better left in the past. When I eventually have children of my own, I've made myself a promise. They will never have to earn my love or compete for my attention. Unlike my parents, I will love my kids unconditionally, just as my grandparents loved me. With me, the cycle of favoritism and emotional manipulation would end. Every painful truth about my family was made clear that Saturday night. I hadn't been invited to the housewarming party my parents were throwing. When I arrived at the house, I could see dozens of guests, catered food, and, most tellingly, moving boxes with Emily's handwriting scattered around, all visible through the windows. As I snuck in through the side entrance, my father was proudly announcing, "After all our hard work, we finally bought our dream home." In her comments, my mother praised Emily for supposedly helping with the down payment. She brushed off questions about my absence by saying, "Oh, Madison's too focused on her career to care about family." The whole scene was every insult I'd suffered as a child. Every time Emily was favored, every moment I was treated like an afterthought, all rolled into one. I had never felt such clarity before. As I stood in the doorway, I was watching my parents rewrite history, getting ready to move my sister's family onto my property without even asking me. "Actually," I said, and the room fell silent. "I believe there's been a misunderstanding about who bought this house." The looks on their faces told me everything about their real feelings: shock, embarrassment, and then anger. My mother was the first to recover, her voice sharp with entitlement. "What's done is done. The house is ours now, and Emily's family needs the space." I took out the ownership papers and the property deed. The house is mine. I never transferred ownership to you. I was planning to give it to you tonight, but clearly that would be a mistake. "You can't do this," my mother said, her voice terrified. "We're your parents. We have rights." "The only rights you have," I said quietly, "are the ones I choose to give you. And right now, I'm choosing to ask everyone to leave my property." What followed was a frantic rush. Guests hurried out, some still holding plates of food. Emily's twins were crying, confused. My father tried to keep some dignity as he directed people to their cars. "How could you do this to your own family?" My mother's voice was a final attempt at manipulation, but it bounced off my newfound resolve. In the weeks that followed, the 5 of them were crowded into a tiny apartment. The messages started right away. My father demanded we re-examine things. Emily tearfully begged for stability for her children. And my mother accused me of cruelty. I blocked them all. The empty house became a symbol, not of a new beginning or a chance for peace as it might have been, but of the final break from a family that had never truly accepted me. A month later, I sold it and used the money to build my own future. Some people asked if I would ever try to fix things or forgive them. But I've learned that forgiving doesn't always mean letting toxic people back into your life. Sometimes you have to forgive yourself for leaving. Before putting away the old wedding picture of my parents, I made a promise to my future children. They would never know the pain of conditional love, the hurt of being compared to a sibling, or the feeling of doubting their place in the family. With me, the cycle of favoritism and emotional manipulation would end. Emily's twins were playing in the tiny courtyard the last time I drove by my parents' apartment complex. I briefly felt sad, but it was for the relationships that never truly existed in the first place, not for the ones I had lost. My grandparents taught me that a real family is built on love, respect, and support for each other, no matter what they say about blood being thicker than water.